Harman Photo is really making the most out of this new emulsion, and honestly, have to respect the business model. I do the same. By now, most of us know what Harman Phoenix is, but for those who have been living under a 20-ton concrete slab for the last year, Harman Phoenix 200 is a new colour film from Harman Photo, the same folks behind Ilford. So why not use the Ilford name? Because legal stuff with names, trademarks and other boring stuff we don't really care about. Anyway, Phoenix is a 200 ISO, colour negative film, and it is Harman's first stab at a colour emulsion. And given how complex colour film is to make, it is a pretty solid first attempt. It launched as a 35mm film and then expanded into 120 format, and now we also have a Redscale version in 35mm called Harman Red. So how do they stack up as a set? Well, let's find out. I don't have anything there, I don't know why you're here. Also, I had the chance to shoot some rolls while I was in California, of all places, while I was there for a few days on a work trip. if I take a photo of this fine establishment and then eat here, does that make me part of the California film gang? After avoiding a few of the Breaking Bad camper vans dotted around, I flew back and developed the film a few weeks later. All the roles here were shot slightly overexposed at plus 2/3 of a stop and developed in ECN2 chemistry to help smooth out some of the film quirks, according to this mad lad's tests at least. So how does it hold up? Well, Phoenix is Phoenix. I've already done a full video on a 35mm version and the too long didn't watch. It's grainy, contrasty, and the highlights clip like Lego. So what's an easy way to handle some of these issues? Well, go bigger, and thus 120 format. On a 6:45 frame, the grain becomes less noticeable relative to the overall size of the image because we've got 2.5 times the image area, but all of the issues around the dynamic range quirks are still here, but the larger format does help smooth out some of the transitions from shadows to highlights. However, now the highlights clip less like Legos and more like two Roombas fighting over a rug edge. I don't write these shit jokes, they just keep happening. Now when it comes to scanning this film, in 120 and 35mm has the same issues because there's no orange mask. The Cool Scan that I use and the Epson with Silverfast really didn't handle it well. I got much better results scanning them as a positive and then inverting them with Negative Lab Pro instead. So now let's talk about Harman Red, the red-scaled Phoenix. Now if you're not familiar, red scaling film means you load the film backwards so that the emulsion is facing down, so light passes through the film base and then the emulsion, which gives you that red tinted look. Now at first when I handled Harman Red, I actually thought for a little while that the film had the emulsion flipped with the base still on the bottom. So that would give you the red scale look without having to shoot through the base. However, it turns out that this thought was just completely wrong. It's just standard Harman Phoenix loaded the other way around. You can even confirm this by taking a look at the leftover film after developing that's sticking out of the can, and you can see, because of that really bright yellow emulsion color, which way around the film is and which side the base is on. Now when it comes to shooting red scale, it really isn't my usual thing. I think it looks really gimmicky, but I do shoot it for fun on occasion and to use up maybe some old expired film or random rolls that I might have lying around that I wouldn't shoot any other way. That being said, Harman Phoenix is one of the better red scale films because it has one big advantage over traditional red scale films: it's easier to shoot. Typical red scale films need about 2 to 4 stops of overexposure due to the orange mask and the anti-halation layer in the back of the film. And this makes sense because the anti-halation layer's purpose is to essentially prevent light escaping out of the back of the film, bouncing off the pressure plate in the camera and then re-exposing the film backwards. And in fact, those halations that you see around bright points of light on something like Cinestill film, where the light passes through the film and then bounces off the pressure plate and is reflected back through the base of the film, creating kind of a red glow around highlights, that is effectively a little patch of red scale around that bright point of light. So that means that red scaling film is basically just pure halation. But getting back to Phoenix, because it lacks both an anti-halation layer and the orange mask, Harman Red only needs about an extra 2/3 of a stop to expose it correctly. Now for my first roll of Harman Red, I shot it at the Smithfield Horse Fair at box speed, ISO 125, and it came out very red. And then for the second roll, I rated at ISO 80, and that really helped. Results were much more balanced, for a red scale film at least, with added green tones and a much broader colour palette appearing. Now also, you might have noticed some extra film data burned into the frames on a few of these shots, and that's on me. So I had actually reloaded this film, and the way you do that is on the F6 is you rewind the film and it leaves the leader sticking out. So then at a later date, what you do is you can put that film back into the canister, as long as you mark it with how many exposures you've taken, and then you set the camera to shoot at the highest possible shutter speed, at the lowest possible aperture, with the lens cap on and the little shutter covering the eyepiece. And that allows you to essentially fast forward the film past the part where you've exposed, and then that leaves a bit of a gap, and then you can expose the rest of the film and shoot the rest of the roll. It's quite a useful trick if you want to switch films mid-roll. But one really simple mistake that you can make while doing this process of fast forwarding the film forward to get to the unexposed part of the film is that if you have a camera with data imprinting turned on, which I do, then you actually can end up with the data imprinting on your already exposed frames, which is what happened here. Now I could have just used Photoshop's ability and just AI'd it out of existence, but then I wouldn't have this extra content for a video, would I? So all in all, Harman Phoenix is an intriguing set of films. I think it's actually great to see Harman Photo getting into the colour game this strongly, and I also admire how they're able to maximise this emulsion across different formats and variations. It's just good business. That being said, I probably won't shoot Phoenix again. When I shoot colour films, I tend to go for low ISO, fine grain films, and Phoenix just doesn't match this style. That doesn't mean it's a bad film, it's just not the film for me. And here's to hoping that the chemists buried in the labs and Harman Photo are already working on Phoenix version 2, hopefully with many improvements to make a truly great film. Anyway, that's it for this video. See you next time. This is the first time I tried to use ChatGPT to help me with script writing. Okay, I had tried it before, but it failed completely, but this time I decided to give it a better shot. And there's a bit of extra text here I didn't realize was at the bottom called, "Would you like me to format this as a downloadable script file with added timestamps for editing?" Why is my computer just like screaming? What is going on? It's probably just a Windows update decided to like nuke all my CPU cores.